Hello, welcome to Making Photos. I'm Ian Butterfield, and welcome to my latest Affinity Photo tutorial. This time we are looking about how to stack a high dynamic range or HDR image in Affinity. I first recorded this tutorial for a live stream last year. So rather than reinventing the wheel and doing it all over again, let me just play in the original tutorial. So here we are in Affinity, and we start off by going to the File menu, New HDR Merge. And with this dialog box, we can simply drag our images in here, or we can click Add. And I've got 6 images from the Macclesfield Forest, so I'm going to open those. Let's go through this dialog box. Automatically align, there's no reason not to have that selected. I'll leave it on perspective. I'm going to say remove ghosts. That's where you've got some movement between the images. It tries to reduce those by comparing the images. And noise reduction. There's 2 arguments here. You could let the HDR merge do it, or you could do it yourself. I'm going to let it do just let it do 20% on there. I can click OK, and it goes off and merges the images together. It takes a few minutes, a few seconds to do it, or a few minutes depending on how powerful your machine is. So once it's done that, it goes into the HDR tone mapping screen on there. So that will pop up any moment now. All right, here we go. The tone map. And this is where we create the actual HDR look. Now there's 2 halves to it. We've got over on this side a series of presets. The defaults, I quite like the dramatic one, which makes it fairly contrasty and a sort of high clarity effect to it. If you want to do most of that work yourself, you might want to start with natural and then just work through the settings on the right hand side. With that, I'm going to use the dramatic as my preset. There are other presets available. If we pull down here, we've got some extreme ones, which basically push everything to the limits. And next is crazy, which goes beyond the limits. To be honest, I don't think there's anything in there that I'm ever likely to use on that. The only one I would get anything like would be the My Eyes See in HDR one, which is okay if you like that surreal look. The final set is the James Ritson Customs, and there's a whole load here that you can use. A lot of them are more sort of urban-y looking ones. For this, potentially Summer Glow on there, but I'm going to actually go with one of the defaults. I'm going to start off with dramatic and use that as the basis. At this point, we move over to the other side of the screen, over here, and we go through those settings. The various options up here, basically we've got the tone compression. If I just move that down, you can see it's less HDR looking, but we've got blown out highlights and things like that. So I want the full effect of that. The local contrast is really the difference between very natural looking and very surreal looking, and I like somewhere in the middle on that. Exposure allows us to change the exposure, lighten it up. We just need to be careful not to lose highlight detail in there. So I'm just going to take that back down a bit with it. The black point, as you can imagine, either crushes or expands the blacks with that. So I'm just going to go something about here. I want to try and keep as much detail as I can in the shadow areas. And the brightness just generally lightens the whole image up. But as it does so, we blow out the highlights. So again, we just need to be a little bit careful with something like that. Moving on down, we've got contrast. We can make it a bit more contrasty or less contrasty on that. So reset that to 0 because I'm not using it. Saturation, you can make it a bit more saturated. I think a little bit might help with it, or vibrance, you can bring it up that way. I'm just going to give it a touch of both on there. We've got the option to change the white balance, and maybe I'll just warm it up very slightly on that. Shadows and highlights. Now this is going to help me a little bit, as I do want to try and bring out a bit more detail in those shadows like that. So I've just brought that up a fraction, and I'm just going to bring the highlights down very slightly to try and prevent the blowout on there. And I could do a little bit more on curves if I wanted to. Just highlight, bring up, and make this a little bit of an S-shaped curve to put a little bit of bite into it. So I've got something like that. Once I'm happy with that, I can then just go over and hit apply. That then takes us into the normal editing screen for Affinity Photo, and allows us to refine this further if we want to. But this tutorial's only about HDR, so that's as far as I want to go with this. I hope you found that tutorial helpful. I'll be back next week with another Affinity tutorial. When it's published, it will be on the screen here, but until then, there's the full playlist of all my other Affinity Photo tutorials. So thanks for watching, and until next time, keep making great photos. Bye for now.